Welcome to Dolphins Today by Chat Sports. I am Nic Rohloff, and on today's show, we have a lot of Miami Dolphins rumors to break down. Obviously, Tuesday morning got shook up when Jalen Ramsey and the Dolphins were reported mutually working together on a potential trade. But Chris Grier spoke to the media in Dolphins media later in the day on April 15th. He shared a lot of nuggets surrounding the Dolphins when it came to the NFL Draft, some of these players that could be traded or not traded, and we'll talk about it all on today's show. And we have to start with that man, Jalen Ramsey, and the trade rumors, because obviously the first thing he was asked about at his press conference was Jalen Ramsey and how this trade discussion got to this point. Well, Chris Grier actually shared it was not a trade request from Jalen Ramsey, which actually caught me by a little bit of a surprise. Grier said that Jalen did not ask for a trade, but after a couple weeks of discussions internally in the front office and his representation, it was in best interest of all parties to move forward. After numerous conversations, it was best to move forward. Grier also noted he is not sure if they will be able to do a trade before the draft, if they want to do one before the draft, or they want to wait till after the NFL draft. And I'll react and talk more about Jalen Ramsey trade rumors, but you would have known about this and seen my initial thoughts before this show if you followed me on Twitter at Nic_Rohloff. I tweet about Dolphins news. If breaking news happens, I'll tweet about it before coming on here and making a video. So if you want to be up to date on everything Miami Dolphins, make sure you subscribe, but make sure you follow me at Nic_Rohloff. Well, my initial reaction to that quote from Grier was this. How could you want to get rid of Jalen Ramsey if he didn't request a trade? Like, seriously. Like, if Jalen Ramsey came to the front office and said, I no longer want to be here, trade me. Okay, I can understand why you're like, all right, he's a 30-year-old corner coming off a little bit of a down year. He doesn't want to be here. But if you did not get that request from Ramsey, why are you getting rid of him? Because even though he had a little bit of a down year last season in coverage, he still is your number one corner, the only guy on the depth chart right now that I currently trust to play at a average or above average level in the National Football League. And he played all 17 games for you. He was durable. And durability is something that can't be taken lightly for Miami because it feels like half of the roster is always hurt. Ramsey didn't miss a single game last season. Like, I don't understand why Miami would come to the conclusion on their own that it's in the best interest of their football team to trade this guy. It just makes no sense, especially when you think of the financial aspect of it. Ramsey's contract is not that bad in the future. It is not after he got that extension last fall during the season. And when you look at what would happen if you trade him, the Dolphins would take a massive dead cap hit if they traded him before June 1st. The cap hit would jump from $16.6 million this year to 19 or 29.2. So you lose $12.5 million in cap if you trade him before June 1st. Now, it's a little bit different if you waited till later in the offseason because you could split up that cap and dead cap between 25 and 26 and actually save $6 million in cap savings for this year. So you could potentially go sign a free agent after the draft, whether it's on the offensive line or in the secondary. But you see the numbers on screen. There's no reason why the Dolphins should want to trade him before June 1st unless they are getting a very advantageous draft pick in the 2025 NFL Draft. But let me know your thoughts. It seems to me that it makes sense to wait till after the draft and go a post-June 1st trade. But what say you? Does Miami get one done with Jalen Ramsey in the next 8 days before the first round of the NFL Draft? Will it be on the draft or will it be after the draft? Pin comment. Let me know your thoughts down below. Just because it purely does not make sense, I am going to think it will be coming after the trade. And now the trade, by the way, could be agreed on, let's just say May 4th. But as long as it's not processed until after June 1st, well, then that's the main thing here because it's all about when it is processed when it comes to the financial aspect of it. So it could be agreed upon any time in the month of May, but as long as they don't submit it to the NFL until after June 1st, then you will be fine from a financial standpoint. Now, I could understand wanting a potential top 100 pick if you get a third rounder in the 2025 NFL Draft. I get that, and I would have to contemplate that. But if you're getting a fourth or fifth round pick, I'd rather have it in next year's draft than this year, if I'm going to be completely honest. All right, the next takeaway from Chris Grier's press conference. It seems like Miami is not going to trade Tyreek Hill. This has been a never-ending saga when it comes to the Dolphins offseason of should the Dolphins trade Tyreek Hill? Is Tyreek Hill requesting a trade? Should Miami do it? It's just been an up-and-down carousel here, if we're going to be honest. But Chris Grier stood pretty firm on the stance during his press conference today, saying that they aren't pursuing a trade of Tyreek Hill, and no team, none, has actually tried to call them and trade for Tyreek Hill. Grier did make a joke, which I don't think he should be making jokes because he's on the hot seat, and I think he should be canned. But he said if a team called and offered 2 first-round picks, they'd consider it. I guess this is the case, though. As much as I want Tyreek Hill to be traded, doesn't seem like there's a market for him, unfortunately. That's kind of where it looks here. If no team has contacted Miami looking to trade for Tyreek Hill and there's no market, then you're not going to trade him for scraps and go out shopping him. But if a team was willing to take on Tyreek Hill, I think it's a mistake trying to keep him. Now, I'll say this, folks. I won't rule out a trade in the future, not this offseason, but at the NFL trade deadline. With how everything is proceeding in this offseason, there's a very decent chance Miami is not a good football team this year. And they are 3-4 games under 500 at the end of October at the trade deadline. And if they got off to an absolute horrific start this year, they have more injuries, well, maybe Tyreek Hill requests a trade or Miami just moves off of them from their own right at the deadline. Would not rule that out. But there's one thing that I will say. This is the final year of Tyreek Hill in a Miami Dolphins uniform. It is. Because if you look ahead 1 year, Tyreek's only got 1 year left on his contract after 2025. That's in 2026. He has a $52.8 million cap hit, but you see it right here, folks. There's not much dead cap. And with that cap hit being so high, it would be pretty obvious and pretty self-explanatory for Miami to move on from Tyreek Hill. They cut him pre-June 1st. Before free agency, they saved $36.3 million in cap savings, which is pretty nice to have going in NFL free agency. The difference of waiting until post-June 1st is only about $2.8 million. So if Tyreek Hill's not traded and he plays out this final year with the Dolphins, well, it will be his final year because he will be cut next offseason. All right, we have 3 more takeaways to get to, but I got to give a shout-out to the official ticketing sponsor and partner of Dolphins Today. That is Game Time. No matter if you want to go to an NBA playoff game, an MLB game, or any other event in your local area, Game Time is the easiest way to get your tickets. Last-minute killer deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the lowest price guaranteed. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA playoff tickets. Miami Heat, if you're in the area, might not be in the NBA playoffs this year if they don't win on the road in their play-in games, but it is what it is. You can go to MLB or sports, concerts, comedy shows, theater events. You can save up to 60% off Game Time buying last-minute tickets to those specific events. They have great seat views. Get a full panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Toggle the all-in pricing feature. That feature shows you the total price of your ticket up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Nothing worse than thinking you're buying a ticket for $70 and it ultimately is $100 at checkout. That's something that will not happen with the Game Time app. Go see event. Whether it's a concert like Lady Gaga and Chris Brown coming in to Miami this year or any other event in your local area. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and redeem code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CHATSPORTS for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, let's get into another takeaway here for the Dolphins, and that is that Miami is banking on Cam Smith. Yes, they're banking on Cam Smith, and this is just not good. This is the exact quote that Chris Grier had on Cam Smith. Cam Smith needs to come through. At the end of the day, he's got to stay healthy. We can't hold his hand and wait for him anymore. And if you need a refresher, Cam Smith, 2023 second-round pick out of South Carolina, basically did not play in his first season as a Dolphin, could not get on the football field for Vic Fangio in 2023. Dolphins had hopes for him to be their CB3 behind Jalen Ramsey and Kendall Fuller on the outside with Kohu on the inside. He battled injuries, missed the first 4 games of the season, returned in week 5, week 6, week 7 in that range, and was horrible. He was bad. He was so bad that he ultimately got benched down the last 4 or 5 games of the season in favor of UDFA Storm Duck out of Louisville. And you can see it. In his 103 coverage snaps last season, he got abused. Abused! Only forcing 3 incompletions. Had a QB rating of 122.4 when he was targeted. He got shredded against the Arizona Cardinals. He got shredded against the Buffalo Bills. He got shredded by every team that he was playing last season. I have no confidence in Cam Smith. I wish I did. And with the Jaylen Ramsey trade news, it's brutal because the Dolphins are likely going to draft a corner in the first 50 picks of this draft. And that corner is going to have to be relied on to almost be your CB1. But if Chris Grier is seriously considering having Smith be their CB2 or have it be a competition between him and Storm Duck, I got bad news for Dolphins fans because you might be looking at one of the worst cornerback rooms in the entire NFL. And when you have to go against Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, up-and-coming quarterbacks like Drake May and others in the AFC, you are not going to be in a good spot with your defensive secondary. I have no confidence in Cam Smith, and it really concerns me for this upcoming season when it comes to the Dolphins secondary. But make sure you are subscribed because we will have you covered on everything Miami Dolphins. We'll be live for all 3 days of the NFL Draft, videos in between. 445 subscribers away from 69K. Goals to get there before the NFL Draft. Hit that sub button if you want daily Miami Dolphins content. All right, let's get to another Chris Grier takeaway here, and it is an update on the offensive line. Yeah, and I don't like the offensive line update. Obviously, Teron Armstead retired, so that leaves Patrick Paul to be your starting left tackle, the second-round pick from last year's draft out of Houston. And Grier said he will be the starting left tackle going into training camp. But they did sign Larry Borom in free agency. They also brought back Liam Eichenberg. Grier said that they like Larry Borom as a swing tackle / veteran to compete with Patrick Paul. And then when asked about Liam Eichenberg as a backup center or starting guard or swing tackle, he said that Liam will provide swing versatility and compete for a job. He wasn't promised anything. He knows there will be a competition. My God. My goodness. What is there to say? Like, if you had any confidence in Chris Grier going into this offseason, it should have been ended when he re-signed Liam Eichenberg in free agency. I would also argue, if you somehow still had confidence after that going into the draft, it should absolutely be ended by what he said today. Liam Eichenberg potentially competing for a spot. If you told me and he said today, Liam's a backup, all right, cool. That's fine with me. Competing? What is he going to compete for? It better not be that starting left guard spot. It better not. How can you have Liam Eichenberg as a starting left guard? Like, that would be abysmal. Him and Larry Borom are not good. They aren't. They're very, very bad. You can just see their career PFF numbers. They were both drafted in the same year. Eichenberg was drafted higher than Larry Borom, but Borom's had a better career in my opinion. He hasn't got as much opportunities as Liam, so who knows if the grades would be different, if the statistics would be different. But in about, I'd say, half the snaps, just a little bit more than Liam, or half the snaps there for Larry, he has more sacks somehow, but he grades out higher in every other statistic, run blocking, pass blocking overall. He has 15 less penalties. So I have a little bit of more faith in Larry Borom. I also know how bad Liam Eichenberg is. The point is this. Not great options. Like, Austin Jackson starting right tackle. Fine. James Daniels starting right guard. I'm excited about that. Aaron Brewer back at starting center. Feel very good about that. Patrick Paul at left tackle. It was a shoo-in. Has to happen after you drafted him in the second round last year. But that left guard spot's up for grabs. It cannot be Liam Eichenberg. Larry Borom has never played guard. So what are the options here? Hopefully not one of these two. Last takeaway with the Dolphins and Chris Grier. Is he committing to Tua Tagovailoa long term? Because he dropped a couple of intriguing quotes on Tua, and I think some people took it a little bit different than others, and I want to give my thoughts on the matter because he was asked about not restructuring Tua's contract. Remember, the Dolphins could have created $19.5 million in cap space this offseason if they restructured Tua's contract, making more money guaranteed and creating a void year on the back end. It would have made it harder for them to get out of his contract in 2 to 3 years, but would have allowed you to sign maybe another starting left guard that is a pretty solid starter and complete that offensive line. Well, Grier said that we didn't feel that they needed to. Strength of the draft aligns with where people would say our need are. There was no need to restructure Tua and touch that contract. And then he also said later on in the press conference, we have our starting quarterback. I would not be looking to draft a quarterback in the first round. Said he would not rule it out, but also obviously said this quote. And the truth is that's the right line of thinking. On both ends, by the way. On both ends, the draft and restructuring. I contemplated wanting to restructure the contract. I did. Because I knew the Dolphins needed to sign free agents. But ultimately, it is the right decision to not touch that contract because if he fails to play 17 games again this season, is bad, declines, or is injury prone again, you're going to want to get out of that contract in 1 to 2 years. So you have the flexibility to do that. But I also think it's smart to not draft a quarterback in the first round because this isn't the class to do it. Cam Ward's a fascinating prospect. I think he's going to be good in the NFL. He's going number 1 overall, though. Jackson Dart, I like him. Not sold on his ability to be a QB1. Shedeur Sanders is the same type of QB almost as Tua. Accurate, limited athlete, weak arm. So I'm not replacing Tua with Shedeur Sanders. And I don't really like any of the day 2, day 3 quarterbacks as a long-term starter in the NFL. So, yes, you are not drafting a QB in the first round. You are letting Tua try to prove that he is that guy. He could stay healthy again. And if he does that, well, then you have quarterback 1 of the future for the next 3 seasons. And you feel good about moving forward with him. But if he doesn't, because you didn't restructure, which is a good thing, you'll be able to get out of it potentially and move on with a draft pick in 2026 or a trade or free agency or anything like that. But when it comes to Tua Tagovailoa, let me know your confidence level for Tua entering 2025. This could be in terms of his play on the field. It could be in terms of staying healthy. However you want to gauge that metric, scale it for me down in the comment section, 1 to 10. All right, bonus takeaway here before we get out of here on this episode. Do not expect safety early in the draft. Early in the pre-draft process, we talked about Malachi Starks at 13, Nick Emenwari, drafting Jahdae Barron and moving him to safety. I don't think the Dolphins are going to take a safety in the first 100 picks. Now, maybe they ultimately take one in the 3rd round with the 98th overall pick that they have, but 48 and 13, I'm not expecting a safety anymore. When asked about the safety room, Grier said that he feels like his room right now has 2 capable starters in it, referring to the 2 players he signed for agency, and Ifeatu Melifonwu from Detroit, Ashton Davis from the New York Jets, and then bringing back Elijah Campbell in the 6th-round pick from last year, Patrick McMorris. He said that they may add someone to the room, so I would expect Miami to draft a safety, potentially with one of their 2 4th-round picks or one of their 2 5th-round picks, but I do not think they will spend high draft capital on a safety. I do actually believe in his sick and twisted mind that Grier believes the current players on the depth chart are good enough to compete in the NFL as starters. So I would not expect to see a Malachi Starks to Miami, a Nick Emenwari to Miami, or any of these other top safeties like Xavier Watts. But maybe Sanker, Bowman, Makuba, if they're available in the 3rd round, maybe then they are the pick for the Dolphins. All right, that'll do it for this episode. Like I said earlier, make sure you are following me over on Twitter at Nic_Rohloff as I am talking Miami Dolphins football over there. And if you want to be covered up to date on news, rumors, that's the spot to get it. So subscribe and make sure you're following me on X.